Good morning. I'm Jim Peters. My pronouns are he and him. I'm a member of the worship committee, and it's my pleasure to welcome one and all to this online and in-person service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. We're a diverse, multi-generational faith community that inspires lives of compassion and generosity, nurtures spiritual growth, cultivates transformative connections, and creates a more just world. Wherever you are in your journey to find meaning and inspiration and hope in your life, you are most welcome here. If you're new to USNH, a special welcome to you and an invitation to stay after the service and join us in the social hall for conversation and refreshments. Also, please know there are hearing assistance devices available in the back of the sanctuary, should you need them, and also there's space in the back with comfortable seating and activities for young people. The presence of young people in our sanctuary is a source of appreciation and joy as we look to our future in beloved community. I have a few announcements. Sharon McBlain and the Waverly community wanted to express their sincere appreciation for all the efforts everyone in the congregation made to support the holiday party on the 20th. It was really a lovely event by all accounts, and a lot of support was shown, so thank you on their behalf. Friends, we're somewhere in the middle of what looks to be a pretty severe flu season, so we encourage everyone to stay safe. The use of face masks is welcomed throughout the sanctuary, and if you're seated in one of these rows over here to my right, masking is mandatory. Extra masks are available near the front doors if you would like them. It's January, which means it's time to sign up for the USNH Getting to Know You Buddy program. This long-running program brings together adults and young people across the congregation as they exchange anonymous notes and small gifts over 5 Sundays in January and next month. Then they meet up at a special banquet and reveal their secret identities. For more information and to sign up, see the table in the social hall, the flyers around the building, or your USNH newsletter. Please join Jesse Greist next Saturday, January 10, for a sound bath auditory meditation. He'll provide a meditative soundscape for between 30 and 40 minutes, followed by a gentle percussion circle. The activity will be in the Children's Chapel from 2 to 3 p.m. on Saturday, January 10th. Lastly, you're all invited to perform or attend at the USNH Variety Show, which will be on Friday, February 13th from 6:30 to 8:30. Sign up to present something using the link in the newsletter, the QR code, and the flyers, or by talking to Jesse or Ellen Greist. By the way, the Variety Show will feature an ice cream sundae bar, just for your information. And now I invite you to make sure you have your mobile devices securely in worship mode. Take a deep breath in and out as our service continues with the call to worship.
Good morning and Happy New Year. All of us are, of course, concerned and anxious about the state of the world. You'd think that in the post-holiday time there would be peace, and there would be reflection, and there would be a deep sense of ultimate national and international mission. But I think we're all anxious today. And so, for the world in which we find ourselves, we light our chalice this morning, keenly aware that the purposes of peace will only be found by our speaking up and our speaking out and our fulfilling our duties not only as citizens but as spiritual beings. And in that philosophy, from the words of Sadi, the Islamic poet, to worship is nothing other than to serve the people. It does not need rosaries, prayer carpets, or robes. All peoples are members of the same body, created from one essence. And if fate brings suffering to one member, the others cannot stay at rest. With our chalice lit, we've come to the singing of our first hymn of a new year. And you all know, and if you are new here, you will now learn, that during the first hymn, we come forward and you can light a votive for a joy in your heart, or a shell or a stone to place into water if there's a suffering or sorrow in your hearts. And Pam Niles, longtime member of this congregation, has let us know that her husband, Dave, passed away last night. She moved away about 3 years ago to a care facility up in Maine. But she still very much considers this her spiritual home, and our thoughts are with her, her family, with the loss of her husband, Dave. So, number 58. Please rise as you are willing and able. From the words of Tennyson, ring out wild bells, number 58. You may be seated, and before I surrender this pulpit back to you, Jesse, it is Question Box Sermon Day, and we would love, I would particularly love, any question that you'd like to write down on a piece of paper. Jamie and Jim will collect them during the offering time, and it's going to be any question. It's ollie and free. It's a lot of fun and also informative, and through the years, as I've done this tradition, people always say to me at coffee hour, Stephen, please stop writing sermons. So it should be fun. And Jesse, the pulpit is yours.
I remember very clearly as a child thinking, considering whether I would ever want to be a public servant, particularly to be a politician. And I heard a quote recently by Peter Tosh where he said, I'm not a politician, but every day I suffer the consequences. I used to watch politicians receive random questions from the gathered media and people and think, how in the world do they ever do that? And why would anyone ever put themselves through that? And then in our staff meeting, Stephen said, we're going to do a question box service where people will be able to ask whatever and you will answer them off the cuff. How about if we do that with your message for all also? So, with no small amount of trepidation, I ask, are there any children who have written down a question for me to answer off the cuff this morning? I did send out an email to parents earlier this week saying if you'd like to bring in a question written with you. So I do not know what's in this envelope, but the Oscar goes to... Well, there are two questions. The first is, how did church start? Yeah. So there's two different ways that I can approach this, because of course there's this place right here. And if the question is about how this place got its start, I can say that Unitarianism and Universalism were not yet one religion when this place got its start. They were still two different churches, if you will, two different ideas, groups of people. They had not come together yet. So that's one of the reasons why the sign outside reads Unitarian Society of New Haven, because this congregation started as a Unitarian congregation. We now consider ourselves Unitarian Universalist. But at the time we got a start, it was just Unitarian. There were a group of people that really wanted a different kind of experience, and they wanted it so bad, they were willing to meet in places like public libraries, like a basketball court in a community center. In fact, when the Unitarian Society of New Haven got its start, it started meeting in, first it was a community center, or in a public library, and then it met very briefly in a basketball court in a community center. But that group of people really enjoyed the messages that were getting shared, and over the first few years of their existence, they put together enough funds to purchase a property right here, 700 Hartford Turnpike. I'm giving the very brief version of it. And they built a building that originally did not include this wonderful sanctuary where we sit right now. For a long time, our services here were out in that, what we now call the social hall. And I have memories from my own childhood of coming here on a Sunday morning and watching our then minister, a man named Wayne Shatty, who would set up chairs in rows, and he would actually measure the distance between them to make sure that they were, all in the right place. And people would listen to his sermons, and then everybody would pick up their chair, put it off on the side of the room, and would convert the space into a social hall. And the second part of the building that got built very quickly thereafter was what we now refer to as the religious education wing. Religious education was very important to the people of this congregation right from the very start, and it continues to be one of the oldest and most used parts of this building. This sanctuary where we sit now is about 22, 23 years old, so it's still relatively young as churches go. But we've been enjoying it since I think it was 2002, 2003, somewhere around in there. Now, if you ask, if the meaning of this question is, when did church itself start? My answer to that would be, as soon as human beings began to use their imaginations, to think about things that are bigger than just what I'm going to eat tonight, where I'm going to sleep. Any creature that has the ability to think beyond those things sometimes has to wrestle with not knowing stuff about the world. And I can imagine that church started around the time people started wondering, started asking questions, started looking into the night sky and wondering what's out there, started looking around themselves and wondering why there are trees and grasses, animals, violence, love. All of those questions are the kinds of things that have brought people together to seek answers to those questions for as long as humanity can remember. So those are two very different answers to the same question. How did church start? Great question. And the other very easy question that I've gotten today is, how big is the universe? And I think the answer to that question, quite frankly, this is just me talking, how big can you imagine? How big can you picture? Guess what? It's even bigger than that. We don't know how big the universe is. Humanity doesn't know. We don't have a definite answer. But we do know that there is a lot out there beyond what we can see, beyond what we can perceive, and it does appear to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, just as each one of us learns and grows every day and makes our mind space bigger and bigger and bigger. How did I do? Let's go make our minds bigger and bigger and bigger. Any children that are in the space right now are invited to come up to your classes down into the childcare with me right now. Let us sing them on their way with "Go Now in Peace." Words are in your order of service. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace. Go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may
Go. I feel guilty reading from a script this morning, so I think I won't. We've come to the point in our service where we share our covenant together, and I'll just say, for me, in a community that does not have a creedal statement that connects us, I'm empowered by knowing that we have a covenant that helps us understand how we're supposed to live together when we don't have a set of agreed faith statements. To me, I appreciate that so much because I feel like that's what we need more of in the world. We don't have to agree on everything, but we need to hold a space where we can interact peacefully and intelligently and thoughtfully. So I feel like the covenant, which was worked on by our board years ago, really does that work, and it only does it if we all affirm it in our words and in our hearts. So I encourage you to take it seriously, to hold it, and if you'd be willing to join me in reciting the words that are in your order of service or on the live stream. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. To this end, we will strive to be open, value differences, listen deeply, use kind language, speak our truths, work with conflict, and seek humor and joy.
This is an excerpt from the poet Philip Larkin's poem, New Year. 'New Year, 'tis the day of the Lord. 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 'Tis the The short afternoon ends and the year is over. Above trees at the end of the garden, the sky is unchanged, an endless sky, and the wet streets as ever, standing between houses empty and unchallenged. From roads where men and women go home, I walk apart. The buses bearing their loads away from the works. Their evening, like a derelict lorry, is alone and mute. Yet to me, this landscape has its uses to make me remember, who am always inclined to forget, that there is always a changing at the root, and a real world in which time really passes. For sometimes it is shown to me in dreams, the Eden that all wish to recreate, out of their living, out of their favorite times, the miraculous play where all their dead take part. Once more articulate, or the distant ones, they will never forget because of an autumn talk by a railway, an occasional glimpse in a public park. Any memory, for the most part, depending on chance. So, it is better to sleep and leave the bottle unopened. Tomorrow, new diaries consulted, new calendars stand. With such small adjustments, life will again move forward, implicating us all, and the voice of the living be heard. It is to us that you should turn your straying attention. Us who need you and who are affected by your fortune. Us you should love and to whom you should give your word.
We've come to the point in our service this morning where we hold up the spiritual and practical virtue of generosity. The work of this community happens because we support it with our generous offerings of time and spirit and money. As the ushers pass by, please feel free to participate and know that in your order of service there are other ways to share. Also, if you have written a question for Stephen this morning, Jamie and I will be in the pews to collect those. We just thought it'd be a little too crazy to put the money and the questions in the same place. So look for us. And just so you know, in any amount your generosity is expressed, know that it is received with sincere appreciation. Thank you.
Two things I want to say real quick before I even look at these things. One is, well, three. One is thank you. Two is, even if I don't get to them, and I can't get to a small proportion of the questions today, I will read every single one of them, and it will inform my preaching and what we all want to be talking about. So this is like taking the temperature of the congregation, which is kind of a great exercise, really. And three, Liz and I do appreciate the people that have turned in checks to us rather than questions. That is a great way to start the new year, there's no doubt about it. All right, I'm going to take a look here. Someone says, do you have a secret talent? Can you do it right now? And I would prefer to keep it secret. As a Unitarian, do you believe in small miracles or serendipities? And if so, what do you think is their source? And from whence might they derive? Very good question. Yeah, I have been a Unitarian Universalist minister for 45 years, and even the most devout, committed humanist will come to me in astonishment and say, I can't believe what just happened. Now, so many of the things that we assume are serendipities or coincidences, as we look at them, they function really as epiphanies, as moments of self-awareness, of opening of our senses and our sensibility. And that's why they're important. Not that they reveal some kind of hidden magic realm that we just occasionally get access to. But having said that, I don't think you can be a sentient being and not be touched, if not knocked off your feet, by some moments in your life that reveal hidden depths that you just, in your normal life, can't experience, which is, in a way, good, because I don't know whether our nervous systems could stand it. But once in a while, we are touched to the very core of our being. And a friend of mine who was an excellent preacher said, people come to church not to become more religious or better people, but to, in the pew, have a moment to reflect upon moments when they felt most alive. And I think that these might be serendipitous moments, but I think they're also opportunities. And I don't think they're about magic, but I do think they're about the opportunity to live life in special moments of revelation where we can sort of figure out who we are and how we relate to each other. What is the best way to live our values, both local and global, both in person and in the community? I think that's the question that we deal with every single Sunday. In fact, I'm not sure why we would gather, well, coffee, of course, but why are we here? Because all of us have this sneaking suspicion we are not meant to live lives in isolation. We are not meant to be alone. And so, even if you don't have sort of classic orthodoxies, even if you don't believe in God or any plethora of gods, I believe that people need each other. As you confront your own mortality, and as you confront moments in society and in daily life that are not really functionally sane. I mean, that's what I felt this weekend, is I was living in a nation that was having a nervous breakdown, and we didn't seem to have the guardrails to be able to bring it under control. And I still feel that. And I was saying to Jim before the service, it's one of the reasons I'm so happy that I've had the opportunity to be here for 2.5 years, because I've needed you and I hope you've needed me. Because all of us have the sense that things are not right. Things are out of joint. And we need places to reassert moral sanity. I'm going to be talking next week about the sermon's entitled Moral Injury. I feel we all are walking around with bruises on our soul and perplexities as to how to move forward. But the week after that is Martin Luther King Jr. week. And I'm going to talk about moral regeneration, because we have to heal. And we have to figure out when the insanity is abated, and it must abate, what are our first steps and what are our second steps? How do we rediscover ourselves? How do we reconnect to our DNA, our character, and our mission of how to relate to one another? And as the question said, both local and globally, because both matter. And in the kindnesses you show to each other, I have been very touched. But we also need to be together as a powerful force, much more powerful than usually Unitarian Universalists allow themselves to be. As good as we are at making a difference. And the one thing I always say in an orientation session for potential new members is when Martin Luther King Jr. asked the clergy of America to come to Selma, nearly half of the ministers who showed up were either Unitarian or Universalist. That says almost everything you need to know about our potential and our opportunity. I arrived through the magic of Amazon, and I'm ashamed to say the word Amazon, this morning a book called Shattered Dreams, Infinite Hope by the Harvard Black historian Brandon Terry. And I'll be talking more about that in a couple weeks. But he says we have to get past the romantic vision of the civil rights movement and understand that underneath it is a tragic vision. And it's that I want to talk about, because in that tragic vision, we will actually find our way forward. It is in that understanding that what happened then is then. What is happening now, we may not have wanted this. We didn't ask for it. We didn't vote for it. But the truth of the matter is, we either confront it or we fail to meet the opportunity that they met in 1960 at the base of the Pettus Bridge. I love this question. What role does music play in life and faith? That's a great question, because I think in my faith I find my life, and in music I find the depths. I have often said, and I'm not just saying this to butter up William and Christopher, it is in music that the entire service is stitched together. It is the framework, it is the emotional holding of everything. We Unitarian Universalists talk a lot. I mean, the question box sermon is me talking for 25 minutes. I get that. But the music is the thing that pulls us in and gives us opportunity to feel things we just can't get at any other way, both in the depths of our being and in the summit of what we can appreciate. I think that music should be more important to Unitarian Universalism than it is. But I'm happy to tell you that my son-in-law took me to a Roman Catholic service on Christmas Eve at 11 o'clock, and the music was terrible. And I sat there thinking, I'm so happy that we have great music in this congregation. So it proves, the old saying is, why don't you use sing hymns well? Because they're reading a line ahead to see if they agree or not, theologically. But that's not the case here at all. You sing enthusiastically, music is important to you, and well, it should be, because there is the very core of our emotional being. And we don't come here, as Jim noted, we don't come here for a creed. We do come here for connection and friendship and for compassion and for a sense of an ultimate sense that we could be engaged in a life of mercy. But I think we come here to be touched at the very root of who we are, in our tears and in our laughter, and I think you get there best through music. And any recommendations for listening? Basically, Beatles. Just, you can stay there, you don't need to go any further. And Brahms, of course, Brahms. When you retire, what do you plan to do? Well, I'm becoming really experienced at this because I keep retiring over and over. I want to write books, and I want to paint, and I want to travel, and I want to be a good grandfather and a good husband, and I want to be a really good Unitarian Universalist. People said, what was the difference in the first 2 years of your retirement, and then you started coming here and back in the pulpit? And that is, I really enjoyed sitting in the pews. I really enjoyed being a UU parishioner. And I'm going to tell you a terrible secret. A lot of UU ministers retired because they don't have the ego thing. They just stop going to church. And I think Liz will reinforce, we go to church. Church matters. The society matters. We think it's important to put our money and our time, but most important, to put our silence into listening and to being part of something so much larger than ourselves. And I was sort of happy that I could set my ego aside to do that. This is a tough question. What is the UUA doing to unite the faiths to organize a moral revolution? And I have to tell you, not much. I've been keenly disappointed by our movement, actually. I don't want to say anything negative as such. That sounds negative. It's an opportunity much more than a negative observation. I don't think we've met the moment yet. I really don't. And sadly, I think the next 3 years are going to provide us many more opportunities to find our soul and to be better and to connect. But we really have to figure out how to unite with faiths beyond ourselves. Will you take an active role in helping us identify a new minister? The answer to that, in short, is I'm not supposed to. However, I am happy to answer any question that any member of the congregation, particularly those who are invested in the search, have about the process, have about what is your understanding of what our needs are. I think I've learned a lot about you in 2.5 years. And I think I have an understanding of what kind of minister can succeed here. And by succeed, I don't mean numbers. I mean in being able to stand at this pulpit and fulfill the larger mission of speaking to your needs. And that seems to be the theme that's coming out this morning. And that leads to this other really interesting question. Are Unitarian Universalists referred to as a movement rather than a denomination? And if this is so, why? Well, Jesse kind of alluded to this at the very beginning of the service. And the answer to that is yes, we are a movement. We are, strictly speaking, an association of allied congregations across the continent, and indeed, really internationally. And why is that? Because we don't have a creed that everyone has to buy onto. What we have, as you pointed out so beautifully, Jim, is a covenant that helps us in relation to each other. You don't have to necessarily believe in God or not to be here. You don't have to believe in whether you live after death or not to be here. But what you do have to believe in, as the old saying goes, is there life before death? True life. True life. And because every congregation has its own particular history, its own particular character, And because they each select democratically their ministry, they're going to be very different. I served for 12 years at the Universalist Church in West Hartford, where I had a stained glass Jesus behind me and where we said the Lord's Prayer every Sunday. I don't think that would work here. And I did have to tell people visiting that that was not Jesus, that was me in the 1960s. So your congregations are sometimes radically different. Sometimes radically different. And that's okay, because I personally think that the greater the spread of diversity that we have across the movement, the more people we can touch and attract. Because there are a lot of needs out there. There are confusions, and there are people that really long for something. And I'd like them to find us. And not every congregation is going to be the right answer for every particular person. So I think some diversity in our movement is not only appropriate, it's smart. Because we want to be a movement. Why? Because a movement moves. It has a self-understanding that it's going forward. We are not about the past. We revere the past. We pay attention to the past. What our forebears did is important to us. But it's what's happening now that matters. That's the truly existential question. I don't really care what St. Paul thinks about Venezuela, but I have a suspicion that you and I better get our act together. What are the three most important qualities a minister must possess as spiritual leader of USNH? I don't know whether I can get it down to three. First of all, I think that the person here has to be deeply compassionate. We have a lot of aging folks in our congregation, and you really do have to pay attention to them. So just because they're not in the pews doesn't mean that they haven't given their heart and soul to this place. And they cannot be forgotten. I've tried to say over and over again, a congregation is understood by the attention that it is able to give to those who are not able to be present. That's the wellspring of kindness and memory. So whoever's here has to be a pastor first. There's no way around that. As this congregation ages, and also under Jesse's tutelage, as it also, at the very same time, paradoxically, is getting younger. I had a person come up to me and said, I went downstairs and there were 12 little kids in the nursery. We haven't seen that in years. That's right. So both things are happening at once. So a good pastor has to be agile, an agile and aware minister. What else? You guys are smart. And I don't think anybody can get up here and do sermons about the weather. I think that they have to have a sense of depth and life experience and an ability to cut across all forms of potential wisdom, which means they better know some poetry. They better read the New York Times. They better have a sense of what's going on around them. They really should understand the larger currents cutting across the larger religious landscape. And you can do that because Yale Divinity School is 3 miles away from here. And therefore, maybe this is not number 3, but just one I wish to emphasize, because if I leave anything behind, it's maybe this. You need to be a teaching church because you are so close to Yale Divinity School. Our congregation has the potential to substantially improve the ministry of this movement. Why? We have an ongoing shortage of ministers all across Unitarian Universalism. And the more people who are trained, who are sensitive to the life of an ongoing parish, the better off we'll be as a movement. And to not fulfill that opportunity would be a shame. And I would even suggest, and this is radical, and I've never said it to the board, I'll just say it to you. I think we should have 2 interns here. I think that would be great. I'll pay for it. But I think that would be fantastic. We really need more and better ministers. Not because ministers rule the roost or because they're the most important people, simply because they offer a vision, and hopefully an empathetic vision, that can move us forward. Have your religious beliefs changed over the duration of your ministry? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. When I was a very young minister, I was absolutely a devotee of Bertrand Russell, and I thought that humanism was the end of all things. Now, I'm much broader in my sensibility. I was not hesitating to come and speak to a congregation that is largely humanist. I had no problem with that, not at all. In fact, I looked forward to it because I thought that it would open up avenues of exploration for me. See, a good minister, if they're listening, very quickly, the sermons become about you much more than they're about themselves. And so I wanted to hear what you needed to hear and wanted to hear. And I thought being in that environment would really deepen my self-understanding as I grow older and as I reach this point in my life. So that felt very appropriate. In so many ways, my religious beliefs have shifted and changed, and they will again. I reserve the right as a Unitarian Universalist to keep thinking, to keep reflecting, to be moved, to be changed. That's really important to me. Do you believe our social justice program is sufficiently robust? It has every possibility of being one of the most functional, effective social justice programs I have ever seen in a local congregation. However, it can also become more democratic in the sense of finding more effective ways of involving everybody. And one of the things that's happening across the movement is in the old days, there used to be, and this will be our last question today, in the old days, there used to be a UU congregation, and we had a social justice committee, and they went out and they represented us, and they had the sign, and they showed up at events. And wasn't that great? It was about 15 people out of 150. That model is 1950s. It just doesn't work anymore. It's completely and utterly inadequate. What we need now is a democratic process where the congregation as a whole, periodically, and I would suggest every year, comes together and selects those issues that they wish to embrace and work on in the coming year, and that the congregation as a whole owns it. So if you come here, you're part of it. Every single member is a member of the Social Justice Committee. And I think that's just a better way to be a Unitarian Universalist. By saying that, what I'm also doing is giving a real salute to the people that show up over and over again. The people that send me the email saying, there's going to be a demonstration at the airport. There's going to be something on the green. The people that figure that out, who show up, the people that do connect, they represent us beautifully. But there's another step. There's another step that I think that we can take together. And that's something that, perhaps you can think about in the years to come. Well, I have really enjoyed this opportunity to do a question box sermon. Who knows when and if I'll ever do another one. But it is really lovely to have your thinking. And as I said, every single question I got, and there are a lot more over here, I will read carefully. And now we're going to sing hymn number 6, and very appropriate, because I'm running out of breath. Just as long as I have breath. Number 6, please rise as you are willing and able. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always an elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they asked what I did best, tell them I said yes to love. Join me in saying the words in your order of service, and you may sit down. Carry forth this chalice flame, its illumination into our daily lives, its sustaining warmth into our relationships, the light of reason shining beyond these walls. May we carry the fire of hope in our hearts this day and in the week to come. My benediction this morning is from Howard Thurman. We all know that the Yule season is not quite over, for the three kings are apparently about to arrive on January 6th, especially in Hispanic congregations all over the world. Howard Thurman wrote this piece, and I think it's the right one for us this morning. When the song of the angel is stilled, and the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home and the shepherds are back with their flock, the work begins to find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace and make music in the heart. Now, may this peace be yours in the week and in the year to come. Amen, and go in peace.